Hello and welcome to another Eurogamer Next-Gen News Cast. My name is Wesley. I'm Deputy Editor of Eurogamer. It is episode 11 or 12. I'm not gone. All time has gone out the window. All weeks are the same. We're still in 2020. It's the 14th of January. We're recording, and I am joined once again by Eurogamer News Editor Tom Phillips.
Hello there.
And making her debut on the Eurogamer Next-Gen News Cast is a potential familiar face to Eurogamer readers. Imogen was Eurogamer's 2019 reporter intern and has since worked as a reporter for Rock Paper Shotgun. Imogen, say hello.
Hello.
It's lovely to have you on. Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
For those unfamiliar, tell us a little bit about how you got going with us at Eurogamer and then subsequently with RPS.
Yeah.
And maybe even for those unfamiliar with Rock Paper Shotgun, what the website's all about.
Yeah, so I started my internship, as Wes said, at Eurogamer in 2019 and worked with you guys for 5 months, I think, doing reporting and features and all that good stuff. And then this is the next gen newscast. Doesn't really apply to us because PC, but yeah.
Yeah, well, it's all next gen when you think about it. Cool. So you normally talk about what we've been playing recently to kick the show off. Let's start with you, Tom. Have you been playing anything interesting, slightly different or unusual this week?
Yeah, I've been continuing to go through the Game Pass back catalogue, and I've hit upon Spiritfarer, which has just been recommended to me so many times that I couldn't ignore it any further, and I've really fallen in love with it. I think it's a brilliant little game. It's perfectly described by its own description of it being a cozy game about dying, or cozy management game about dying. It wasn't really
a cozy game about dying, did you say?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Sounds lovely.
It's strangely engrossing, and there's a lot of things I really like about it. It's not quite what I expected. I thought it was going to be more story orientated, but it's not. There's a strong story to it and a set of characters, but it's also a management game about sailing a boat from one side of the map to the other side and growing like growing the boat, building up stuff over time, collecting resources, turning them into buildings that you can then create better resources, turning them into more buildings, characters that come on board your ship request things. And like the mission structure of the game is picking up passengers, learning a bit about them, getting to know them, fulfilling some kind of final request that they have, and then delivering them to the afterlife. The beginning of the game is basically you becoming the next guy who sails along the River Styx and delivers souls into the great beyond. And wow. Over the course of it's a really nice kind of wrapping for quite a standard but well put together management game. And what has really attracted me to it is that, as well as sort of the characters that come and go, there are longer term characters that you get to know. And I hate to pull upon this as like the comparison, but it reminds me a lot of Mass Effect. And
oh my god, not everything in your life is like Mass Effect. As much as you like to,
I wish everything.
You wish it were.
Maybe it should be.
Yeah, exactly. Imogen's on my side, a fellow BioWare fan.
I am. I love Mass Effect.
But like,
yeah, I mean, we're all Mass Effect fans, but how is Spiritfarer like Mass Effect? Go on.
Well, you have best buddies on the boat who become your long-time companions, and you end up doing building things for them, getting to know them, and it's a lot different. It's on a much different scale, different budget game, but you do over time start to pick up a real picture of what these characters were in life through the snippets of information they give you about stuff that's happened, why they are as they are. All of them appear as like their true forms are animals in this sort of in-between realm. So it's a bit his Dark Materials as well. And it's really nice getting to know these characters while doing, you know, relatively mundane things, but in a really nice world that I can sort of dip into at my leisure and have fun with. Yeah, I'd really recommend it.
Have you romanced any of them?
You can't. I don't think you can, which I think is a good thing because these characters are all dead.
And animals.
And animals. I mean, there are several problematic things right there.
Okay, well that is different. That is new. That's quite nice. Imogen, what are you playing at the moment?
I am really uncreatively playing lots of Valorant. So Riot's tactical first-person shooter. Got a new character this week that I want to unlock. So yeah, been trying to blast through a few games of that. I really like Valorant. It's like one of my go-to ones to play with my pals in the evening. Other than that, I have been playing lots of Stardew Valley because of the new update that came out in December. I started a beach farm, and yeah, just got a couple of nice chicken coops on the sand. Yeah, spending lots of time
chicken coops
mining.
on sand. Hold on.
Yeah.
Hold up.
I put some grass down for them. It's fine.
On sand.
Yeah.
The grass is growing on the sand.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's a video game, Wes.
You can get grass growing on sand.
Yeah,
you get grass
like sand
on
dunes.
Pampas grass.
Is that what it is? Is it?
Just say yes.
Absolutely not. Yeah. Well, yeah. All right.
Okay.
This is
it's
how
all
you
right.
do it.
I believe it's fine. It's totally believable. I think it's interesting you mentioned Valorant. We haven't really spoken about that game on the newscast before. So I'm interested in learning more a bit about how it plays, because everything I've seen about it makes it look proper hardcore, like super hardcore team-based shooter, kind of Counter-Strikey. But is there anything about it that makes it like more than that, or is it basically that the way you would describe it?
Yeah, so I think the reason I like it a lot is because I'm a big fan of Overwatch and the kind of more colorful hero shootery things. I never really liked CSGO. It was a bit boring, I thought. And I didn't think that I would like Valorant, but I do. It's kind of, the gunplay is really good and it is very tactical and it can be quite slow at times, but because you have these weird abilities on the characters, they make the game a lot more interesting, I think, just to kind of mess around with, because you can make interesting team compositions like you could in Overwatch, and be able to like blind certain areas of a site that you're trying to push with different smokes. You've got like different grenade kind of abilities. The new character can teleport and go invisible and stuff. So it is quite hardcore, like not at my level of play. I'm not that good at Valorant, but I think it's really fun. I don't know, the abilities just make it really interesting for me.
And you're playing with friends, right? So you're talking,
yeah,
communicating the way it's being played. Yeah, that will automatically make it more fun. Oh, that's cool. I finished Cyberpunk this week, having started pretty much when it came out, and it took like, I think my save file was like 70 hours, maybe something like that. And because I'm one of these people, I don't know if you're the same, where if a game gives you the message, right, this is the end, you sure? Like, because you can like clean up like loose ends and other bits before now, and now's the time to do it. I was like, oh, okay. And so I decided to just like do some of the quests, finish some of the side quests that I hadn't done. And that spiraled into, now I have to clear the whole map of everything before I trigger this final mission. And that's literally been the last week of my life, to the point where I was like, I started playing the final mission and it was just like, well, oh God, when will this end? Even though it was quite good. But yeah, I just had this weird compulsion to hoover up all the icons on the map. And I think the ending I got was okay. I'm not going to spoil it, obviously, but I'm kind of glad to be finished it. I was sort of getting a bit bored of it towards the end, so I'm glad Cyberpunk's done now. And that leads me nicely into one of the stories that I wanted to talk about this week. And it feels like we talk about this game every week, but it's kind of hard to not, because it's just such a huge story.
Because it gets delayed every week, that's why.
Yeah, this week, CD Projekt put out a video of their boss basically apologizing. Again, they apologized a few times. It's another apology for just fucking up on console. I mean, that's literally what happened. That's what they've done, and he's apologized. And some of the language he's used to apologize is interesting. Talked about their testing showing that the game was running, like, didn't have the major issues that it's got on console. That their testing didn't pick up on it. And I've seen a fair amount of criticism of that language online, of people saying, you shouldn't throw QA under the bus. They'll have been, doing their best to sort things out. And oftentimes QA flag these things, are perfectly well aware of them. They just don't get fixed for whatever reason. But yeah, he's basically saying, their testing show that on console, some of the issues that people have found, like crashing, and it does crash a lot on console, just didn't show up, and they thought they could make it for the release. It didn't happen. And interestingly, there's like a FAQ that went online at the same time as this video message, where they talk about crunch, and in the FAQ it says they're not going to do mandatory crunch anymore. And everyone knows CD Projekt's horrible history of crunch, and they did it in the run up to the game's release, and that this is a priority of their future releases. So maybe that's true. They've said this before. Who knows? But one of the other things that they've talked about is essentially a delay to a lot of the stuff that they had planned. The next gen update won't hit now until the second half of 2021. Tom, you wrote this story. There's more to these delays than just that. What exactly is the plan from the roadmap that they have put out?
It was actually overnight, so it was our evening reporter Matt Wales that wrote.
Oh, okay.
It's good, isn't it, that it's coming up later. It has to be, if they're sticking, at least for now, to their promise of no more crunch. They have said that in the past. Whether when it comes to Cyberpunk multiplayer or Witcher 4, and it's November and they need to get it out before Christmas, and they're like, guys, we know we said no crunch before, but the chips are down, we really before Christmas again. Whether that will work, who knows? The roadmap for this year is that they're going to continue patching the game, working on the game, and then the next gen versions are clearly coming much later than planned. They're coming a whole year really after the original release of the game, which is an extraordinary wait. They weren't down for that time period before. I was expecting to sit down and finally play the game optimized for the console that I got it on in the next couple of months. But yeah. And there was kind of an admission that the base consoles, the last gen consoles, there's so much they can do, but really the technical limitations of those consoles literally are what they are. I mean, I think those were his words, right?
Yeah.
So what can be done for those consoles now remains to be seen.
Well, maybe not crash. The game isn't even on the PlayStation Store. It's still not back on the PlayStation Store. So it's kind of crazy situation where they're obviously going to have to get the game to a place where it can be sold again. Imogen, are you like, did you play this game at all? Do you care about Cyberpunk at all?
I kind of dropped off it really quickly, actually. So I played it probably solidly for the first 2 weeks it was out. And then, I've kind of just over Christmas forgotten about it a little bit. And it wasn't even, I think partially it's down to some of the bugs. Like I had a couple of the slightly game breaking ones where it just gets me caught in an infinite loading screen, and it just kind of like put me off, really.
What are you playing on? What were you playing?
PC.
Of course.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought about getting it on PlayStation 5, but then I was like, well, I'll go for PC because then I could mod it and stuff. And the majority of my playing Cyberpunk recently has been to mod it and see if any of the mods fix anything or make it slightly more interesting. And some of them do, but yeah, it's weird because obviously the game was extremely broken on old gen consoles, but it is also still quite bad on PC. And modders do what they can to make some of that stuff better, but it shouldn't really have come down to that, I think.
No. My question is this. So you dropped off it. Tom, you sort of bounced off it. I stuck with it. But my intention was always to use this playthrough, which I'm doing on PS5, as a kind of like precursor to my main playthrough, which was supposed to be when the next gen update came out. So I'd effectively learned the game and wouldn't repeat my mistakes. Do we think that by the time the next gen update comes around, people care? People still care about Cyberpunk? Will it, will you return to it, even if it's like September or something? I don't know when it would be, some point in second half of 2021, or will the world have moved on by then, Tom?
It's difficult to say, isn't it? I think if they do a big relaunch for it, and that's when it finally goes back on the PlayStation Store, and I don't know, it's very difficult because you just had this massive crescendo, kind of like a 7-year build-up, and then just a sad trombone at the end, and now it's like, quickly, let's try and get the band back together again for next year, when it probably should have come out anyway. The only thing I can think of really is that there may not be much else out at that time, which sort of leads on to other things we're going to talk about too. But the release schedule for 2021 at the moment is very up in the air, and it just depends what else is coming down the pipe. But I think this year is going to be really disruptive. So maybe Cyberpunk can claw back a little bit of that attention. It's going to be very, very difficult though to come back around from just the enormous PR blow up that happened at the end of last year. It was just such an extraordinary. I can't remember if we talked about this, but a lot of it happened actually just after I clocked off for the year, and I sort of witnessed some of it, even though I'd very consciously, like, I didn't go on Twitter or anything over the Christmas break, but I was sat at home, and I was actually reading a newspaper, and on the second page of The Guardian was like this story about Cyberpunk, and I was like, I can't believe, I've clocked off for the year and Cyberpunk's followed me into the physical real world. But like, that was just how enormous and high profile everything was, and it's going to be really difficult to come back.
Emma went on Sky News to talk about it, and
I know, yeah.
She sat in her interview and she did an actual T-pose. Which was one of my highlights of the year, seeing her do that. Imogen, are you going to go back to it at any point?
Yeah, maybe. Like, I think the big pull for me will be if and when it gets multiplayer, because I play a lot of games in the evening, like on PC with my friends. Like, we're always looking for kind of new stuff to kind of just mess around in, really. And Cyberpunk seems like it would be really good for that. But in the state that it is currently in, if it had multiplayer, I don't think we would have bothered. So if next year, maybe that is a thing that happens and there's like a big relaunch of the game, but specifically focused on that I think would bring me back. But
yeah. In terms of the single player, you're done?
I'm kind of bored of it. I don't know.
Shit, man.
Yeah.
They got a job on. Okay, well, talking of delays, it's been an interesting week, just to see the delay. What I'm sure is going to be like a period of delays, high profile video game delays begin. I guess the first one to talk about is Hogwarts Legacy, which has been delayed to 2022. Tom, you wrote this story, and I know that you're excited for this game. It was due out in 2021. They've delayed it for 2022. Did they give it any insight at all into why this has happened, or is it like what we expect from a lot of publishers, developers to say, lockdown, coronavirus, it's just taken its toll, and it's not really realistic for these big games to come together in the same way that they had planned?
Yeah, there was very little in the statement. Just a few lines really talking about making the game as good as it can be, and giving it the time that it needs to do that, and that 2022 was when it was going to come out. It was interesting, just after that announcement, Bloomberg, formerly Kotaku reporter Jason Schreier, said or suggested that this was going to be the first of many of these that we're probably going to see in the next few weeks and months. And that seems very likely, just because the way that games are, if you were close to release in 2020, you might have QA, polish, that stuff affected, which after getting set up remotely, you can do. It just takes a bit longer. Games that were further out, if they were like year, 18 months, still go. You're looking at mocap, performance capture, audio capture, really and big decisions about games that need to be made collectively as teams rather than as individuals working, just like following and finishing up individual projects. That stuff is a lot harder to do. So I think we are going to see a few more of these. It's a shame, but I think there is also the other aspect of it is Cyberpunk. It's what we've just been talking about, this massive sad trombone, and like, it's such a big game with such a passionate following behind it, and the studio. And I think there's a real feeling that if Cyberpunk can come out and mess up, then that can happen to anyone. Like, no one's reputations are safe. No one's projects and products are assured. You can work as hard as you can, and I hope Cyberpunk is kind of a lesson, not just to CD Projekt, but to anyone, that don't rush games. People, I'd much rather wait. I think everybody would much rather wait, and just release it when it's ready.
Yeah. Let's talk some speculation then about the next domino to fall. So there's not actually, I was looking at it earlier, there's not actually that many games that have official, I guess big AAA publisher-led games that have official 2021 release date slapped on them that have been announced already. There are some assumptions we can make about, what publishers intend to release, towards the end of the year. But what do we think is at risk? Can we make any informed predictions about what might be delayed? Imogen, are you expecting? Would you be surprised to see any particular games make it this year that have been announced for this year? Do you feel like any delays are coming for any particular titles you're tracking?
I'm not sure, really. I think one of the big ones I'm kind of excited for this year is Deathloop. And that's already been delayed once, or maybe twice, I think once. But kind of because of everything that's happened last year, kind of with the pandemic, I think a lot more studios are going to maybe start to think, oh, maybe we do just need a little bit more time, as well as what Tom was saying about, Cyberpunk putting the fear in a lot of developers that if this can go that badly, then, maybe do we want to hold off for a little bit? But yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm worried about Deathloop, mostly because I really want to play it and I kind of hope it's not delayed, but I also would like it to be a very, very good game. So yeah.
So Deathloop has a 21st of May 2021 release date. How are we feeling about that? Imogen, you feeling good about 21st of May?
Yeah, kinda. Yeah, May's that's a nice time of year. I don't know. I have a bad feeling it might get pushed back a little, but yeah, we'll see.
We haven't heard much about it lately, have we?
That's the concern, I think. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Everything just feels so until a thing happens, it just doesn't feel like it's going to happen, and then the thing will happen. You're like, okay, it's happened.
Yeah.
It's just that sort of, last year was that sort of year. I'm sure this year will be that sort of year. So yeah, until that game is out, as far as I'm concerned, it's delayed. It's just generally delayed.
Schrodinger's game delay.
Exactly. That's game development this year. That's exactly right. Tom.
Well, even Cyberpunk is out and still got delayed.
It's true.
Cyberpunk came out and then it uncame out.
So even
So
nothing is safe
this year
anymore.
Tom, is there anything due out in 2021 you expect to be delayed, apart from Harry Potter now, obviously?
There's a few. I don't really want to speculate and wish delays on anyone, but I think that a good number of games are going to be delayed. I'd actually say one game I think won't be delayed at all, out of 2021 is Zelda, because I think that will have to hit this year, which is the 25th anniversary. So I'm holding all of my hopes on that. Of course, now I've said it, it will probably get massively delayed just to prove me wrong. But no, I really think that will hit this year.
Okay. I think Halo will come out this year.
Really? Do you think it will come out on Xbox One?
Yeah, I think it has to. I think it has to, because I don't think it should, but I think it has to, because it's been, I guess, a similar issue to what Cyberpunk ran into, which is a lot of sort of like pre-order intent and marketing, brand awareness of that game having an Xbox One version. And, you know, they have said it will. So, and you know, meaningfully, what can change now if they ditch the Xbox One version? You know, like you would go in a year, or what, 9 months or whatever. What could meaningfully change if they ditch that, apart from avoiding a potential like Cyberpunk disaster? But I don't think like the Xbox Series X version would meaningfully change. The game has been built for both versions in mind. So the only situation I would see it being like canned for Xbox One is if it's just a disaster on that console and there's nothing they can do to make it like not be a disaster. But this isn't a Cyberpunk style game. Based on the gameplay we've seen of Halo Infinite, this isn't like a graphics pushing, graphics card melting kind of game. It looked like a relatively okay looking first person shooter with sort of like visuals back to the roots of the original Halo. So it's not like a big open world city with a million different things going on. So I think it will still come out on Xbox One. I think they'd be loath to cancel that version, even though they probably should have done a long time ago. Talking of games that are coming out, that we know are coming out, it's been an incredible week for Lucasfilm. I don't think any of us sort of predicted the announcement that we've seen around Lucasfilm this week. It started with what I thought was a fairly innocuous announcement about Lucasfilm revealing their new games logo. They're called Lucasfilm Games, I think, which when I saw just immediately annoyed me, because I could think of so many more elegant ways for them to describe themselves. And I thought, oh, okay, that's a weird sort of thing to have happened early in 2021. Okay. And then brand new Indiana Jones game from Machine Games, and then brand new Star Wars game from Massive Entertainment. So it's been an incredible week for Lucasfilm games already. Let's start with Indiana Jones. Tom, explain what has been announced, who the developer is, and based on the tiny little teaser, what we know so far.
Goodness, well, we know quite a bit actually, or we think we do. So first off, as as you said, there was this tease that Lucasfilm Games was a thing, and no one really expected anything more from that. And then Bethesda dropped this tweet with a video in like 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a Tuesday afternoon. And I remember clicking on it, being like, okay, Bethesda's teasing something. It's probably some boring Elder Scrolls Online update. And it was like a pan across this old desk, and there were lots of artifacts on it. And I was like, that looks a lot like Indiana Jones's Grail diary. What? A plane ticket to Rome and like diary entries and a typewriter, and there's like Machine Games. They make Wolfenstein. It's the Wolfenstein developer. And like Todd Howard's on one of the books as the author. I'm like, what is going on? And then the music builds, and you're like, oh my God, it's the Indiana Jones theme. And Bethesda's Wolfenstein developer, Machine Games, is making this project, which is amazing for all number of reasons. Number one, Wolfenstein is a Nazi killing shooter. It's really good at what it does. It's the perfect time setting, that developer and the Indiana Jones franchise. Like they just mesh together so well. It's Bethesda, so we can have all the same conversations that we've already had about, is this game going to come out on what platform and when? They've said that it's still a ways off from more information, but this is just an announcement that the project is underway. And people have been burying into the stuff that's shown in the teaser on the desk, and sort of they've worked out that it's set in between the two best Indiana Jones films, the first and the third, Raiders and Last Crusade. In the middle of those, it looks like Indiana Jones is going to be going to the Vatican, to Rome. It's a time in Italian history when Mussolini was cozying up to Hitler. So you got the Nazis in there, as you would expect. And there was some good detective work done on like what potentially the object could be that Indiana Jones is being tasked to go secure and place in a museum. It's just like, it was a 30-second teaser or something, but it really, really set the internet alight. And
I can tell.
There was so much lore on that table, Wes. It was really my cup of tea.
It's lovely to see you so excited for this, as clearly a big Indiana Jones fan. Imogen, had you heard of Indiana Jones?
Yes.
Before the announcement.
I've seen all the Indiana Jones films.
All three of them? Okay, good.
Yeah, all three of them. I probably cannot tell the plot apart from each one because it's been a very long time since I've seen any of them, but I have definitely seen them all.
What's your take on the mashup of Machine Games and Indiana Jones? Good fit for you?
Yeah, I think so, definitely. If it is in the style of the Wolfenstein games, I think then, yeah, that like perfect, to be honest. The only thing that I wouldn't want really from an Indiana Jones game is like another Uncharted or Tomb Raider kind of style thing, like, because it's, been there, done that, and I find those a bit boring.
So you want it to be a first-person game then, rather than a third-person game?
Maybe. I think that would be a more interesting take on it. But equally, I think third person would work. But yeah.
Interesting. Because I'm struggling to try and work out what kind of game this game is going to be. Because Machine Games you automatically associate with really explosive shooters, like guns everywhere, just blasting the crap out of stuff, with a bit of really cool storytelling.
Yeah.
They're renowned for their storytelling characters, great cutscenes, and they always have really interesting hub areas in their games as well, in the Wolfenstein games. And obviously the sort of Nazi killing aspect. But Indiana Jones isn't like a action hero in that sense. He's not like gunning down people with an assault rifle or anything. He's doing lots of other different things. So is that sort of like, what kind of things are we wanting from the game? Are we looking for it to be a like, because Indiana Jones is like he's like a melee character, really, like, isn't he? He's when he's like, the action stuff is a lot of that ridiculous punch sound in the films, that's so like heavy duty. And the whip. Surely the whip is going to have to factor into it.
Oh yeah.
But he's not like picking up AK-47s like Nathan Drake does and murdering 100 people on on top of a train.
Yeah, I definitely don't think. Well, I don't want that personally. Like, I don't. And Uncharted can be very repetitive in what it does, I think. And for me, those games aren't super interesting. I think for like a proper good Indiana Jones game, it should be like something explorative and maybe like a little bit stealthy, because there are some aspects of that in the films, and I think that would be an interesting way to explore it a bit more than guns blazing.
I think one thing Uncharted games do well is they have some of those set pieces where Nathan Drake is like in a brawl and he's just punching his way out of it.
Yeah.
And Indiana Jones does that a lot, right? That's kind of how he gets out of a lot of situations, and ends up, punching his way out. So I think that is really bad in first person.
Yeah.
Like all first person melee, most games, not all, but most games, just first person melee is bad. Like it's bad in Cyberpunk, it's bad in Bethesda games. Like, just punching with little fists coming out of the bottom of the screen is it's kind of rubbish. So if they're gonna if they have that as a major part of it, I kind of feel like it has to be third person, really.
Yeah.
I think it will be. I think.
I was going to ask you what kind of game you're imagining, Tom.
My initial thought is third person, just because you've got. I think you're going to have to include some platforming and puzzle elements. It just wouldn't feel like an Indiana Jones game without those, and those just fit better for me in a third person kind of style. I'd be very happy if they went back to some of the old LucasArts Indiana Jones games as inspiration. So Infernal Machine and Atlantis.
Oh, Fate of Atlantis, one of my favorite games of all time. That.
Yeah, like a real precursor to Uncharted, Tomb Raider, those kind of games. I think I would really like it if they kept the shooting bits to a minimum, just because that doesn't really fit Indiana Jones. I mean, he certainly wields a gun at certain points.
He's got a handgun, hasn't he? But it's a kind of last resort-y sort of thing, isn't it?
Yeah, you like the perfect Indiana Jones example of him wielding a gun is that bit where he has no other option because there's that ridiculously scary looking guy with a sword who comes up and does all the ridiculous sword things, and Indiana Jones is just like, I'm just gonna have to shoot you. And like, but he's not that guy. He's and he certainly doesn't wield a automatic weapon very often. That's like, if you're going to fulfill the Indiana Jones fantasy, you want to be like exploring tombs and aligning jewels in things so that it like cast the way forward. And
so the light shines and the thing opens and the music. Yeah, absolutely. I think this is the problem. It's a wonderful sort of circle of life element to this, which is Tomb Raider, which astonishingly is 25 years old this year, was basically like a rip of Indiana Jones, right? And they couldn't get around the fundamental gameplay design problem of you're playing a video game and if it doesn't have lots of shooting in it, it's a bit boring. Like that, so Lara Croft had guns and shot a lot of stuff, could even dual wield. Naughty Dog with Uncharted, same problem, came to the same conclusion. They couldn't really avoid having a lot of gameplay where Nathan Drake picks up all sorts, rocket launchers and Uzis and AK-47s, and just murders like thousands of people. And then there's a cutscene where he's like, "Oh God, I'm not sure," where he's all like happy-go-lucky one-liners. So I think this what will be fascinating is to see if machine games can crack that problem, which is create a game that is true to Indiana Jones, which cannot have him gunning down loads of people, without it being a bit boring. So yeah, but we're not going to find out for a long time, right? This is a proper tease. I don't. When do we think we might see this game? What year are we thinking? 22, 23?
Maybe 23, optimistically.
I agree. I think that this teaser and the Ubisoft Star Wars teaser are at least 2023 and out. And to like the Star Wars game, not to start talking about that already, but
well, let's move, because it's the perfect time to do it. Let's talk about the Star Wars game.
It's a 10-year deal that EA has got with Disney to do Star Wars AAA games. It was signed in 2013, 10 years on, late 2023. That would be the earliest I would expect to see the massive game. And I think the same is true for Indiana Jones.
Right. Well, yeah, talking about the Star Wars game, another surprise. I did not see this one coming either. Ubisoft are making an open world Star Wars game. It's in development at Massive, which is the Swedish studio behind The Division. And that studio is also making an Avatar game, which I feel like they've been making for forever, at least as long as the new movies have been in development.
It was announced in 2017.
So that studio's got a lot going on. But this is a hugely interesting project, and it's been fascinating to see the response. Imogen,
Yes.
what kind of game are you expecting from this?
So they've said it's going to be an open world kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. It's so early to kind of talk about it, because the Star Wars games we've had so far, like Battlefront and even Star Wars Fallen Order, it's all been very combat focused. And I would hope from an open world game that it would be less so. Just to make it, because there's a lot of interesting stuff you can explore in Star Wars, right? And it's not all about lightsabers and blasters. Like, yeah, I'm not sure. It's really, really early to think about it. I think that's, again, is just my hope for it is not completely combat focused, because we've seen that, and there are other interesting things that can be done.
I mean, it's in development at Massive, which made The Division.
Yeah.
So my gut reaction was it's going to be like The Division, but Star Wars, right? And I'm sure there's more to it than that, but it feels like that by giving it to them, that is, an indication of the kind of game it's going to be based on what they've done. And, The Division is a third-person looter shooter, co-op focused. I think PvP is the focus, really, Division. Co-op focused game where you're exploring an open world together and getting loot. And as depressing as that sounds, I can totally see this being that kind of game where you're just like, rebellion person number 1 plus rebellion person number 2 scavenging for stuff.
I don't want that. I don't want a looter shooter Star Wars, please.
Tom, what do you think it's going to be?
I have two thoughts. One is a hope and one is an expectation. My hope is that it will be set in the new period of Star Wars canon that they've just introduced, the High Republic, which is 1,000 years before the original films. Well, basically all of the films. It's a time when there were like countless Jedi running around. It would basically be the only time that they could let all players be Jedi and have fun with lightsabers, and I would love that. The first book just came out and it's been getting really good reviews, and it's going to kick off this whole new era of storytelling that they want to push into more books, graphic novels, perhaps games as well. Realistically, I think that it's more likely and probably simpler and probably more lucrative if they do a bounty hunter game and tie it into the Mandalorian world of its own, because it's now become like this hub for 4 spin-off shows that they've announced. And my mind just goes back to the opening episodes of Mandalorian and how video gamey it was. Like, you went to Carl Weathers, you picked up a bounty mission, You killed the bounty. It was a whole quest. You came back. You cashed it in. You got some stuff. You upgraded your armor. You went to that like woman who lived in the sewer, and she gave you an arm. Like, do that for a game. That's it's video game design as a quest structure as a TV show. And then, like, Mandalorian is so popular right now that I think that, you know, you've got a studio that makes that game, but in like 2020 Washington DC, just give him like the Star Wars license and make that game but set on Tatooine or the Mandalorian planet, and people can do the same thing but like get Beskar instead of nuts and bolts.
So it's The Division then?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what it'll be. Yeah, I mean, it might not be, but I think that's probably, you've got the Division studio, that's what it'll be, and I will love it.
I mean, we'll play it. What's clearly happened here is Lucasfilm Games is making a major push, right? It's the EA exclusivity deal is coming to an end. They seem keen for other companies to get involved, making games for Star Wars. And we should specify that this is like PC and console, because EA never had the exclusive on, for example, mobile Star Wars games. It was always what they called HD Star Wars games, which meant PC and console. So now HD Star Wars games, it feels like, Pandora's box, and anything is possible. So the obvious next question is, we've got Machine Games doing indie. We've got Massive doing Star Wars. What dream sort of fantasy developer LucasArts pairings would we like to see next? I like kicking it off, personally, I would love to see Don't Nod try a Star Wars story game, just a sort of narrative focused Star Wars game that had all of the Don't Nod stuff that they have, where it's like, your dialogue choices have massive impact on the story, very character driven. I think if they're like looking for partners, they're an independent studio. I don't think it would be. I think it would be a nice, really nice like addition to a portfolio of Star Wars games that already includes more lucrative, I suppose, Star Wars products. Or is that just like ridiculous idea? Is that like a thing that could never happen?
I think it's an amazing idea. It's and you have the Life is Strange crew, who just kind of set up their own studio in Montreal or somewhere in Quebec, who split off and are working on some mysterious project. It's a really interesting one, because like Star Wars as a franchise has often done stuff for the YA young adult audience, but they've never done a video game for that audience before. I would love to see them try and tackle that and like do kind of issues-based storytelling for it, but within the Star Wars universe. I think that'd be absolutely fascinating if they did that. It's a really good idea. Yeah,
well, I would say they can have it for free, but I'd rather they paid me. Imogen, any ideas? Any like dream Star Wars projects that you'd love to see in video game land?
My dream Star Wars project, which I've actually mentioned a couple of times since this announcement went out the other day, but I think that Arcane would make a brilliant Star Wars game, like kind of in the style of Dishonored, set like after the events of Order 66, playing as like a Jedi who's got to stealth their way around some like crappy backwater planets and towns, dodging the Empire or whatever, because the powers and the way that works in Dishonored would work so well for a Jedi, like with your lightsaber and force abilities and all that kind of thing. And like, I just love Dishonored and Prey, but I just think that they would work so well with Star Wars.
They really would, yeah. Especially if it's, I mean, the after Order 66 suggestion is perfect, because the Jedi at that point are just trying to survive, right? They're not running and gunning. So yeah, that could be, and like, do we know what they're doing as a team? Don't think we do we? I mean, Deathloop is a different team, isn't it?
I think so.
Because they've got two. I think they've got two studios, one in the US and one in France.
Yeah, I don't think that they would. I don't know if they'd ever get the license to be able to make a Star Wars game. But if they did, that's what
why
I want.
not?
Or
I mean,
even like
Machine Games is making Indiana Jones game. Like,
yeah, very true.
All bets are off.
I was gonna say even like a game where, so like spoilers for The Mandalorian, but so Ahsoka Tano is in the new episodes of Mandalorian, and she is like basically trying to liberate a town that's been taken over by some evil people, and that would make a great premise for an arcane Star Wars game where you get to play as Ahsoka, who's going around helping people and doing that kind of thing. So yeah,
that is a good show.
That's what I want. That's what I want.
Tom, you're following two cracking Star Wars game ideas, so the pressure's on. What you got?
I think both of those are amazing and should happen. Did you say it has to be Star Wars, or can it just be Lucas or Lucasfilm games?
Oh yeah, Lucasfilm games is fine. Yeah.
Well, I then think that they should fucking give the rights to Monkey Island back to the people who deserve to make that game. Ron Gilbert, Tim Schafer, Dave Grossman, and make it at form a new studio. Just make it Double Fine. Like
Double Fine, yeah. I don't think you need a new studio. Double Fine's right there.
Yeah, like bring Ron Gilbert back in house and make that game. And it's funny, Tim Schafer, as soon as maybe it was a big coincidence, but when that announcement happened this week, Tim Schafer retweeted a load of old Monkey Island 1 concept art. And I was just thinking, if there's ever a time, Ron Gilbert had been trying to get the IP back from Disney for ages and ages and ages, and you've essentially got themselves trying to get their act together now over at Disney, making Lucasfilm games a thing again. Just do something with that license, please. It's sat there. You're not doing anything with it. It doesn't have to be a AAA game. Just give it to them and they'll make something amazing with it, I bet.
It really would, yeah. That's a great... You pulled out of the bag. I think we've got 3 cracking ideas. We should be like, I don't know, we should be big executives at a video game company. Yeah. We should run Star Wars. And you can have Monkey Island, Tom. Okay, so we basically fixed Star Wars in the post-EA era, but actually it's not really the post-EA era, is it? As it sort of like felt initially, because EA has come out and said, we're still making Star Wars games, we're just not exclusively making Star Wars games. And while it does feel like the end of an era for them with Star Wars, we still suspect that there's plenty more Star Wars games that they're working on, right? So everyone is expecting a sequel to Fallen Order, right? We still think that's in the works. That's not all of a sudden been cancelled because of this.
Yeah, I would have thought so.
After the Rebels blew up the Death Star in Return of the Jedi, and everyone's like, hooray, the Empire's dead. They're still around in the Mandalorian's time, and so EA will be as well.
Wow.
I thought it was very interesting this week when EA put out that statement that was basically like, guys, we're still working on Star Wars as well. I wonder how well they expected. I mean, I think they probably must have known that other studios were going to be working on games after their 10-year license ran out.
Yeah.
But did they expect the announcement was actually in the article that came out first was in Wired, and fair play to them, asked straight up, like, what does this mean then for the EA partnership? And Lucasfilm Games, as diplomatically as they could, were like, it's been great working with them, but we'd love to see other people do some stuff as well. And I think people drew their own conclusions, right? Because there's so much history there when you look back at like the successes, but also the games that haven't made it and the things that hit the headlines over the 10-year period to do with like Battlefront 2 and projects like Ragtag that we know a lot about, but are never going to come out. Yeah, so I mean, to go back to your question, I expect EA will still treat Star Wars as the massive IP that it has access to, and Jedi Fallen Order sold decently, and I think sets up a sequel in its own story. And EA is it's starting to explore things like remasters a bit more, and so you might see older games come through as well. Yeah, I think that they're going to be making all sorts of stuff still.
I think everyone would like BioWare to have a stab at Knights of the Old Republic 3. I'd love to see another game in that series, as a huge fan of the originals. And obviously it would have to be, I guess, in the sort of Mass Effect mold. This is clearly not something that's, going to happen in the short term, but, at some point I'd love to see that happen. Respawn, with the Jedi Fallen Order sequel. And they're still running the Old Republic as an MMO. That doesn't all of a sudden turn off now. And, Battlefront 2 is still running. You can still play that game. That's not turning off. Do we think there'll be a Battlefront 3?
I hope not.
Why?
Ooh,
harsh.
Because there's been two, and there's not been two. There's been loads of Battlefront games, and they're all fine. But there's so much more interesting stuff that can be done with Star Wars, and I feel like game studios should be learning that from the success of The Mandalorian and seeing how that's just a completely new, random, unique story in Star Wars that's done so well. I want game studios to look at that and go, yeah, we can do something unique and interesting also that's like that, and not more, here's a war game, go and run at someone as a stormtrooper and shoot them. I don't know. It's a hope.
You're right.
Another hope.
You are right. Yeah. It's a new hope for us all.
It is.
Brilliant. Okay, well, thanks very much for your time, guys. Really appreciate it. And thank you, Imogen, for appearing on the Next-Gen News Cast. It's been lovely to have you on.
Thank you for having me.
We do this bit at the end where we point at each other's Twitter accounts in case people want to follow us or check us out. For those who are interested in more brutal takes on the Battlefront series, what Twitter account should they follow?
So I'm at Imibeck.
And Tom, for other perhaps misguided hopes around Monkey Island, where should they go?
It's at Tom Phillips EG.
And I'm at WYP100. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.